The sheer amount of videos I've seen titled "What is Tarkov?" leads me to believe that a lot of people are interested in playing, but don't really know what they're getting themselves into. So let's clarify a few things first. Is Escape from Tarkov worth getting? I mean, depending on who you are, yeah. Is Escape from Tarkov PvP or PvE? Well, it's both and at the same time. It's not always clear if the person shooting at you is a player or NPC, and that's part of the fun. Is this game related to Stalker? That sounds a bit funny, but this question got asked enough that the developers ended up making a full post about it on their website. No, it's not really like Stalker, although the settings do give off a similar feeling. Which weapons are the best? Well, it's actually not about the weapon as much as it is about the type of ammo that you're using. You're going to want to use something with high armor pen, but that also has... Okay, wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. Tarkov's been popular for a while, but it really started to explode around November of 2019 when Update 12 was released. The update brought a lot of quality of life improvements and new features, but the thing I was most excited about was they moved the entire game over to the latest version of Unity. Even though that may sound less significant, I think it was the most important part of that update. It allowed them to begin fixing the dreadful amount of network and server-side issues they had. To be honest, it's still pretty bad. I don't think a day's gone by this past week where I haven't seen a server issue pop up. It's been a problem for years, and it's not as if they haven't tried to fix it in the past. There was a point where it seemed like the worst of it had been fixed, but then the game absolutely exploded in popularity thanks to them partnering with Twitch. Along with the release of Patch 12, people who watched Tarkov streamers would be able to unlock in-game loot. So it became the most watched game on Twitch, and all of a sudden new players started pouring in to try out Russian Rat Simulator for themselves. Only problem is, if you've only seen it on Twitch, then you might think Tarkov plays a lot differently than it actually does. Skilled streamers can make it look easy, and more like a generic first-person shooter type game. When in reality, it's more of a first-person shit yourself and hope the guy with an M4 doesn't hear you type game. As the title suggests, this game is still in beta. I don't normally review a game that hasn't officially been released yet, but I just need to talk about Tarkov. It's changed a lot over the last couple of years, and I'm sure things will continue to change until it's finally out of beta, so obviously don't expect the current issues to be reflective of the final product. If you're someone who aspires to be a professional bushwookie, then you'll feel right at home in Tarkov. This is a hardcore tactical shooter, which means it's basically a multiplayer recreation of Ghillies in the Mist. A lot of people seem to think that Tarkov is some sort of battle royale, when it's really nothing like that. I mean, if anything, it's more of a horror game. When you go into a raid, you spawn in at the same time with a bunch of other players. But it's not last man standing wins. Every player is going in with a different goal in mind. Some people are trying to locate a specific objective, others are trying to kill scavs to complete a quest, and some are just trying to find graphics cards to start their Bitcoin mining empire. What you're trying to accomplish during a raid may be vastly different than what other people on the map are. There is a countdown timer till the raid ends, but you're free to leave at any moment as long as you can make it to your exit. So how long you stay in and search for more loot is up to you. In that sense, Tarkov is really more like a push your luck kind of game. Moving slow and staying out of sight will mean you survive a lot more raids. Being a bit more high risk will generally lead to a much higher reward. Both are valid ways to play, though you do need to be accepting of the consequences that come with each playstyle. The highs are high, but the lows are downright painful. You lose everything you brought in when you die, so best case scenario, you've just lost 20 or 30 minutes of your time. Worst case scenario, you've lost your time and thousands of dollars worth of gear. So if you manage to kill someone with much better equipment than yourself, you'll feel like a god killer that can never be stopped. But also that you have to get the fuck out of here immediately. You are always on the edge of your seat, which can honestly be exhausting considering raids can last for well over 30 minutes. The good news is that one good raid can make up for several bad ones. This game rewards you for playing smart, which I think is the defining characteristic of a good tactical shooter. That, and constantly feeling like there's someone watching you. In order to play smart, you need to know how the game works, and because this is a hardcore tactical shooter, it's vastly more complex than a traditional FPS. So, on top of being worried about why the trees are speaking Russian, you're worried about your character's health, how loud you're being, whether or not you need food so you won't die of starvation. Each weapon takes getting used to because they control in a realistic way. You need to know what the different types of meds do and which ones you need to bring, since a good portion of your raid will be spent stapling yourself together. Sound is everything. How fast you're walking changes how loud your footsteps are, but also what you're walking on top of can give you away as well. I haven't even mentioned positioning, and if you're playing with friends, then coordination. There's so much to learn and so many important concepts to understand, but it makes for one of the best gameplay loops I've ever played. When you go into a raid, you actually have 2 characters to choose from. Your scav is like your own personal sewer rat. You'll spawn in with random items and get to keep whatever your claws come out with, but you have to wait 20 minutes until you can summon another one. Fellow scav NPCs won't attack you, and you can even team up with them. But other player scavs will probably shoot on sight. How do you tell the difference? Good luck! Turning against the scavs is totally fine, but just know they will see you as an enemy of the state. Your PMC is your main character. You need to bring in gear from your personal stash each raid. If you die, then everything you brought in is gone forever unless you get it back through insurance. As a PMC, everybody will try and kill you. Scavs will shoot at you, other PMCs will shoot at you, your own friends will shoot at you. It really is the true Tarkov experience. But what I like about Tarkov that sets it apart from other games in the same genre is this is an RPG disguised as a tactical shooter. Your PMC actually levels up and increases certain skills as you play. A good way to do this is by completing quests for the different traders. I go back and forth on how I feel about these. On one hand, I think there's a lot of positives about them. They give you a task to accomplish which provides some structure to the game and points you in a direction to go, rather than completely throwing you to the wolves. That's especially useful for new players who wouldn't really know what they should be doing otherwise. They also get more and more difficult over time and branch out in complexity. Straightforward tasks like killing X amount of scavs on a specific map teaches you to learn your way around and practice using different weapons, which escalates to obtaining secret documents, stashing certain items, and even gaining the respect of one of the traders at the expense of another. This is the quests at their best. They can be hit or miss though, with some that are just a chore to get done. Tarkov will have you hiding in a corner, chugging a jar of mayonnaise so that you can successfully spend 5 minutes in a state of dehydration. Or the absolutely riveting skier quest of, give me $6,000. Where the game starts to rear its early access beta head is how little it'll hold your hand on some of these tasks. Unless you've done them before, you basically have to use a wiki in order to understand what you're supposed to do for some of them. Which is completely fine, just know that that's the running theme for most parts of this game. They haven't added a tutorial yet, so you might want to spend some time watching videos before you bring in that modded out M4. What's great is you can approach this game in a lot of different ways. If you've looked into Tarkov before, you might have seen people joke about rat meta. It's a bit of an overdone joke, but it's still really true. Being a rat and hiding in the shadows is a really fun way to play this game, but there is a limit. If you're camping an exit instead of actually playing the game, then you've gone too far. I mean, there's a million other more fun ways to play. You can be aggressive and hunt down scavs and players. You can try to avoid confrontation unless you're sure you have the advantage. Or you can just stick to the outskirts and loot. In fact, you'll probably do all of these things at one point or another. It just depends on what you're trying to accomplish. Making it out of a raid with a backpack full of loot is a great feeling, and there's a lot of choice in what you decide to do with it. You can sell the loot for rubles, or add it to your own personal spreadsheet. There is crafting by combining different items, so it makes sense to hold on to some stuff. But if you are selling, the question is where to? The traders all have a different shtick, and in order to improve your standing with them, you'll need to trade with them on top of completing their tasks. Therapist sells meds, Peacekeeper sells NATO weapons, Jaeger is a nutjob who lives in the woods and makes you do self-harm in order to gain his respect. Oh god, make it stop. If you want to make the most amount of money possible, then you're probably best off selling your items on the flea market. Things will typically sell for 3 or even 4 times as much as they would if you sold it to a trader. An early wipe can be anarchy. There'll be seemingly useless items going for ridiculous prices. Usually because it's a quest item or is necessary for upgrading your hideout or something. The hideout is like your own personal Russian bomb shelter, and the modules that you can make are actually pretty great. There's a shooting range to actually test out your guns before you use them, a moonshine station, a Bitcoin farm, all the key staples of any Russian household. The hideout is a recent addition to the game, and it's a welcome one. It's something to work towards other than leveling up my character, and it gives off a stronger sense of progression than was previously in the game. Just don't buy everything you need off the flea market right away, or else you end up paying 100,000 rubles for a goddamn light bulb. Which isn't ideal, because you want to spend most of your money initially on gear. To say that there's a lot of weapons in this game is an understatement. There are 17 different types of AKs. That should tell you everything you need to know. Only downside is, if you're like me, you tend to stick to the same few weapons and miss out on half of them that the game has to offer. The quests do force you to try out different types of weapons, but I wish they would go a step further and add a few more of these types of tasks. Anything to break me out of the loop of the same few guns I think would be nice. Just don't make it miserable. What's even more impressive is how much you can alter any of these weapons within the modding system. You could spend hours fiddling with the most minute aspects of a weapon to try and tailor it to your playstyle. The amount of care that has gone into this system and the attention to detail is astounding. They're still going back and forth with the balancing aspects of a lot of these weapon mods, but even in its current state, it sets a new bar for weapon customization. And whether you're trying to min-max an absolute beefcake supreme, or create something with a little personality, it's gonna be a great time. We've only begun to scratch the surface, and there's so much I'm glossing over here. Obviously, there's an abundance of useful information out there for new players if you go looking for it. There's a lot you should know about how this game plays in early game compared to the middle and late, but there's plenty of great videos out there already, so I won't be doing that here. What I will say is, in my opinion, Tarkov is at its best in that early to mid-game stage. Going into a raid with a mediocre weapon that's got some random attachments taped on, and just praying to come out with some decent items is a lot of fun for me. It's a point in the game where I like to use a lot of the gear I end up finding, rather than just immediately selling it to a trader. And to me, that's what Tarkov is all about. Endgame can feel like you're hitting a wall a bit, especially if you've been there before. There's a strong presence of a meta in the late game, where everyone starts to bring in the same few weapons and armor. At that stage, it feels like a lot of the choice is taken out of the game, and each raid starts to blend together a bit more. There's still fun to be had at this level, without a doubt, but that's usually the point where I stop playing for the rest of the wipe. Oh yeah, I should probably talk about the wipes. Because this game is still in beta, they're releasing new updates all the time. Usually about every 6 months or so, they get ready to release a more substantial sized update, which can include new gear, maps, quests, traders, and so on. In an attempt to balance those things out and test how they fit into the game, Battlestate Games basically just hits reset on everyone's accounts. So then everyone starts at zero again, and it usually leads to a mass influx of returning players. Understandably, there's plenty of people who don't like the idea of wipes. I mean, why would someone enjoy losing all the progress that they've made? Well, call me crazy, but I actually kind of do enjoy it. It's kind of like how you have your favorite single-player game that you'll restart over and over again. There's something so fun about everyone being reset on an even playing field, and being able to return to that early and mid-game stage. Most people who have put the game down for a while will get the urge to re-download, because it's a chance to relive their Russian rat career. What's not so fun is it means the servers will once again be in shambles, but that's just the nature of where the game is at right now. Now, if you're someone who only started playing right before a new wipe, I'm sure that's a huge pain in the ass. So I think the natural choice that a lot of players who want to get into Tarkov make is to wait until there's a new wipe to start playing. But I don't think that's the right decision. When I say everyone's on an even playing field, that's a bit misleading. The truth is, there will be people who reach level 40 in less than a week, and you won't be able to keep pace with players who know exactly where every quest item is by heart. With a game that has as much to learn as this, why not hop in halfway through a wipe to get the feel of things and figure out what you're doing? You'll be lost at first regardless, so my advice is don't let the wipes dictate when you should start playing. Only other tip I could give you when you're first starting out is use an actual gun. That might sound stupid, but my first reaction was to bring in a pistol for all my PMC runs, because I had too much gear fear to use anything else. but you're going to have a harder time killing anything with that than if you had just bought a cheap AK or something. There's a reason why getting all these pistol kills for Skier is such a huge pain in the ass. Gameplay aside, there's a lot to be said about the visuals here as well. The first thing to know is the graphics settings can be hit or miss. Things have gotten better lately with different graphic optimizations, but things still don't work how you would expect. For a long time, turning your graphics settings up actually made the game run better. That has changed a bit, especially over the last year or so, but you might need to look up a comprehensive video if you're having trouble running the game. Certain maps are more optimized than others, and although they've been going through and reworking a lot of them, there's still a noticeable difference in performance at times. The different maps also struggle to balance the lighting for indoor versus outdoor environments. God forbid you have a monitor that doesn't handle darkness very well, because if so, then you might have some issues. You can try messing around with the post-effects options to increase the game's brightness, but although that might make the indoor areas more playable, it can make the outdoor ones look like the surface of the sun. Post-effects is also good for making this game look a little less gray, but unfortunately this might cause a decent FPS hit. Even without these settings on though, this game looks fantastic. I've already talked about the incredible detail with the different weapons, but the environments themselves are great too. The post-apocalypse genre is an oversaturated one when it comes to visual art styles, but somehow Tarkov manages to have a distinct look and feel to it, which is super impressive. Similar to the visuals, the sound design is great, but can also behave a bit strange at times. There's detail down to what you're walking on top of, like broken glass or concrete, which all make different sounds. That adds a pretty significant new dynamic to the combat, to the point where what you hear is as important as what you see. It'll save you as many times as it'll get you killed. It is not perfect yet though. Probably the best example of this is wood floors. Even slow walking on hardwood floors sounds like you're stomping your ass around. Then there's the sounds for all the different weapons in the game. The fact that they've recorded the actual sound effects for each individual gun really shows how dedicated the devs are to creating a realistic shooter. I mean, this is the type of thoroughness that you would expect from a AAA studio. That distinction between gun sounds is important for the gameplay as well. It allows you to work out not only where a certain gunshot is coming from on the map, but also which weapon is making that sound. What's frustrating about a lot of the audio is that it's inconsistent. You can't really rely on being able to make out exactly where people are based on their footsteps because the directional sound is all over the place. Someone might sound like they're right behind you, but in reality they're on the floor above you. More recently, they added Steam Audio to the game, which has fixed a lot of the issues relating to the positioning of sounds. While it didn't fix everything, it's a vast improvement over what it used to be. What's weird is Steam Audio isn't enabled by default. You have to enable binaural sound in the settings to get this to work. They're probably still working on testing it, but this still doesn't make a lot of sense to me. How many new players are going to play without even knowing this feature exists? I don't know, it just seems like a strange choice. I've pointed out a decent amount of the issues with this game so far, which again, might be a bit harsh considering it isn't fully released yet. At the same time, I have overlooked tons of bugs and issues that you might find if you start playing today. Reason being is the updates for Escape from Tarkov have been very frequent, and from what I can tell, it still seems like the updates that lie ahead will be some of the best yet. You don't have to look too hard to find hints of what this game might look like in the future. Based on how things have changed recently, it seems to me like the developers have a clear goal in mind of where they want this game to end up. There's definitely a decent amount of hurdles on the technical side of things, but in terms of the actual content, I'm really excited to see how things progress. The abundance of technical issues is still concerning though, and they'll need to get things to a more stable place before they can come close to a full release. Hackers have been a reoccurring problem that has gotten so bad in the past. I've avoided entire maps just so I wouldn't have to deal with them as much. It's also a good example of an issue they've worked on and made progress on, but that still has a long ways to go. Overall, it's a game that deserves the attention of any fan of tactical shooters. It's quite a bit off from a full release, but if you like what you've seen here and can look past a significant amount of technical issues, then Tarkov is a no-brainer. This is a game that will probably have me shitting myself for a long time, and I welcome it. Thanks for all the support this last year. I'm excited that people have actually taken the time to watch this stuff. It means a lot. The games that I've reviewed have been a bit all over the place, and it'll probably stay that way. Hey, I mean, if you think I have any sense of direction, then I'm not sure where you got that idea.